This podcast is brought to you by Moloko. If you're an app marketer concentrating most of your budget in Google and Meta, you're not alone. 88% of consumer app ad spend stays inside walled gardens. Meanwhile, there are billions of daily users spending their time elsewhere in gaming apps, dating apps, productivity tools, you name it. That's where Moloko comes in. Moloko's AI-powered platform connects you to those users, reaching 2 billion daily users across 3 million apps. Ready to diversify? Visit molokoads.com and start scaling with confidence. Again, go to molokoads.com to learn more.
This podcast is brought to you by Adelaide. Media verification and measurement are undergoing major disruption. Legacy players are pivoting to performance advertising, AI is reshaping brand safety, and attention is replacing viewability. Adelaide is leading the shift with AU, a new way to assess media quality that scores placements based on their potential to drive attention and outcomes before your ads run. Think of it like a credit score for media. Finally, a clear view of quality before you buy. Take the guesswork out of your investment strategy and try Adelaide AU on your next campaign. All right, welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. This is Ari Paparo. I'm here with Eric Franchi, and our guest today is Paul Bannister, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for Raptive. Eric, you know Paul pretty well, right?
Yeah, we've had him on before. He is a go-to around all things publisher and publisher monetization, and just with everything moving so quickly these days, I think he's going to be a great person to dig into. And he did a presentation, I think, that you saw that inspired this. Yeah.
Yeah, like last Thursday, I was double dipping. I was at the Roku Summit, and then I was also at the BidSwitch Summit. They're like a block away from each other. And at the BidSwitch Summit, Paul gave a presentation of some original research on consumers and AI. I love original research, new insights I hadn't seen previously about how consumers react to AI content. So I asked him to come on the show and to present some of that. So it should be pretty interesting.
Awesome. And then we've got a bunch of news as usual, earnings wrap up, and maybe, kind of like a quarterly overview. We should talk about what we've learned. We've got AI. We've got a couple of random stories as well. So this will be a fun one.
Yep. Let's get into it. So we'll be back in a second with Paul. All right, welcome Paul Bannister, the Chief Strategy Officer from Raptive, and I think a two-time guest on Marketecture. Is that right, Paul?
Sounds right to me. Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think after 3 times you get a robe. That's what we're thinking.
Oh, nice. Exciting.
Or a blazer.
This robe.
The robe. I think there was a joke on Saturday Night Live where Steve Martin had a robe. I think that's where it's in my head. It got incepted. So, Paul, we wanted to have you on because you're obviously one of the kind of deep thinkers on the publisher side in advertising. But also, I saw you last week at the BidSwitch event, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I know it's all blurring together. And you had done or had collected a bunch of research on consumers and AI. And I wanted you to kind of walk us through what you found, because I thought it would be interesting to our audience.
Yeah, definitely happy to talk about it. So we probably have like 2 big data sets that we pulled together. One is a big survey that we did of 3,000 US adults, demographically representative, blah, 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 all those good things. And it was really about their views of AI content and what they think about it. So that's like bucket 1 of data we have. And the other data set we have is we have a lot of traffic data across, 6,000 sites. And we actually looked at a group of, I forget the exact number, but around 4,000 sites that we've had traffic data on for at least the last 3 years. So we have a lot of information about like traffic changes by vertical and the different kinds of sites and how AI has impacted different areas and things like that. So it's kind of like 2 different things that we pull together into kind of one big story. I'll talk about the survey first. So in the survey, what we did is we had across multiple verticals of content types, we had human generated content that was like real stuff that you find on a website today. And then we had AI generated content and it was not like AI slop. It was good AI stuff. It was like Claude Sonnet wrote it. Like it was like pretty good quality things.
Okay.
And we then, in the case of the survey, we sometimes labeled the content as either human generated or AI generated. So people knew what it was. And other times we didn't label it. And then, so basically 4 cases, AI generated, human generated, labeled or not. And those are your kind of scenarios. Then we showed those to all the people. and we asked them questions about like, what do you think about the trustworthiness of this content? What do you think about like, do you feel connected to it? Do you feel like you understand the author? Do you feel like you, would tell others about this? Like a whole bunch of different questions like that. We also integrated advertising into the content, and we asked people their thoughts of the ads in the content and what that was. And we had a couple of different learnings come out of it. I think one thing that was interesting was when the content was labeled, people did trust AI generated content slightly less than human generated content, but not terribly less. Like it wasn't a huge gap there. And again, I think part of that was because we gave them like content that when you read it, you're like, this is pretty good. Like it was not junk.
Right.
And so like, when things were labeled clearly, people felt good about things. When things were not labeled, people were very suspicious. They really didn't like it. And to some level, while they couldn't label it correctly in a lot of cases, like we asked them, like, do you think this is AI generated or not? They were very bad at guessing whether it was or not. Interestingly, even when they were wrong about what it was, their emotional feeling was worse with the AI generated content than the human generated content. So it was like a very interesting, like subconscious impact on people in terms of how the data showed up for that. So that point we called kind of like the AI stink. If you were suspicious that it was AI generated and you weren't clear about it, your trust levels went down like 30, 40, 50%, like really big drops in like how you thought about the content. And the same held true for ads integrated into the content. Like, so that was kind of its own big problem there.
And Paul, that's because you asked them. You asked the survey respondents,
Yes.
like, do you think this is AI generated or something like that?
Yeah, it was one of the questions. Although to that point, we asked them often, the order of the questions was randomized. So many times they got that question much later in the survey after they already answered a whole bunch of just like feeling questions. And so it was pretty interesting in terms of how that shook out. So,
right. So AI labeled content. If it was AI labeled, people felt a little worse than human labeled, right?
Right.
But
Yes.
if it was not labeled and they suspected it was AI, that gave it the stink.
Exactly. So that was kind of a very interesting thing that came out of it. The other big interesting thing that came out of it was is this point that we assumed that as people become more experienced with AI, like these sort of issues might go away because it might be like, okay, I know what I'm getting here and I understand and I feel good and whatever. And so one of the questions we asked people was kind of like where they are on the spectrum of like AI usage, whether you're a total newbie, been using it for a little while, or like, heavy user sort of question. And the interesting thing was that this like lack of trust issue kind of looked like a curve in that data where novices felt like didn't trust it, felt bad, like those numbers went down. People who were like somewhere along the pathway where they were like moderate AI users, they actually were like, this is good. Like they felt good about the content, and that stink issue was like far less for them. But then the most experienced actually swung back up to almost the same level as the novices, where the people who were really AI savvy were like, yeah, I don't trust this stuff at all. Like I'm totally suspicious. So that was kind of the other really interesting when it was just kind of this curve that came out of the data in terms of like trustworthiness based on how experienced you are with AI.
Yeah, I want to just point out that, AI has been generating content for like 10 or more years.
Yep.
Like, sports scores and like stock articles have been written by AI like well before the LLM era. I remember seeing there was a narrative content, I think was the name of a startup in Chicago.
Yeah, narrative science.
Science. I don't know if consumers realize that, but like it's been pretty common among the kind of like commodity writing for a long time.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Although, like the scale at which it's happening right now, and the content area is just far higher than it ever was before.
Yeah. Did you find any differences by vertical? Was it like with sports, news, etc.?
So we asked a question in terms of where are you most or least comfortable with AI generated content, and to some level, like some of it was pretty obvious. Like the type of content that people were most comfortable with AI generated content was simple factual lookups.
Sure.
Like, yeah. Like if it's just a fact, like I don't need a person telling me that. Like AI will summarize that great and be really good. That did really well. On the reverse side, like people wanted like personal stories. Like they wanted a human to write it. Like that makes sense. But then there was a whole bunch of inconsistencies. Like the second most, the second highest vertical in terms of people not wanting AI content, so wanting human generated content, was parenting and family, which kind of rings true. Like you learn something about your baby, like you kind of want like a person to tell you about it. But the interesting thing is it doesn't hold up in our other data set, where we have all this traffic data. And one of the verticals that's been hit hardest from what we see, at least from traffic loss due to AI, is parenting and family. And so people are saying that they want human generated content, but doesn't really seem like that's actually holding true. They seem to be fine to ask ChatGPT, like, how do I put my, colicky baby to sleep or whatever the question is, which is pretty interesting.
I'd be scared to know what ChatGPT would tell me about my baby. So let's transition. So we've seen reports that SimilarWeb put out some really aggressive numbers, like 30% to 40% declines in traffic on major news sites like CNN. Other folks have said, 10, 15%. So what are you seeing on traffic?
So everybody's got a slightly different story. It is, the two best indicators we've seen are content vertical matters a ton.
Okay.
Sports has been hit hard. Travel has been hit hard. Personal finance, like things like that are like quasi factual in kind of nature. Those have been hit pretty hard. Food, which is one of our biggest verticals, like not really hit so far. Like some people are using ChatGPT to get recipes, but not that many, it seems like. And so like that, like vertical is a big factor. News, we don't have as many news sites. My data there is not amazing, but from what we see, news hasn't been hit as hard, partly because search already hasn't been a great traffic driver for news for a while now. We see actually those sites getting more traffic. At this point, I feel like it's like 2x the traffic they get from Google Discover than they do from search. And so I would be like, we haven't seen like a big hit to news sites because it happened years ago to some level. And so that's that's inconsistent with what we see, but everybody's got a slightly different data set. So
there's also, I don't think they've put AI overviews in the news tab yet, to the extent that people use Google News.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the headline though? What percent down across categories?
Ranging from 0 to 30. And more in the 10s and 20s, I would say. I think our data is pretty consistent with a lot of other data we've seen out there from that perspective.
At what percentage do publishers hit the panic button?
Well, I think they already do, because it is also like my numbers are averages. And that means that some people have been fine. Because the other big thing is bigger sites generally do better than smaller sites. And we've got a pretty big range from big to small. And I personally have had multiple conversations with content creators of smaller sites who are like, I'm closing up shop because I have lost too much traffic. And so those people didn't take a 20% hit, they took an 80% hit. And the game is basically over at that point. And so it's kind of already happening where people are saying like, I'm giving up here. But on the reverse side, like a big thing we talk about with people is like the number one defense against all this is having a really strong brand. If users know who you are and want to come to you, they will find you, and they will find you in different channels in different ways. And like that's what you got to do. And so like I think that's got to be the biggest focus for people.
Right. And when you say the big sites are getting less impacted than the small sites, is it brand, or is it also email newsletters and multimedia content and stuff like that?
It's both for sure. To some level, also like the bigger you are, typically means you have a better brand, which typically means you're more diversified. I mean, if you're a small site and you were 90% SEO, like that's a whole lot of eggs in one basket, and that is likely not going to work out well for you.
Yeah. Okay. So what can we learn? So especially from the consumer survey. How are you taking that survey results in action? What are you telling your clients?
I mean, a big thing for us is, we've taken a stance for the sites we work with that we only want, well, we say human generated content, but really what that means when we boil it down is we want content that has significant human involvement. And so we're trying to ourselves like draw the line in terms of like, if somebody spins up a site and produces 5,000 articles in half a day, we don't want that. If somebody figures out a way to use ChatGPT or whatever tool at scale to help them go from producing 5 pieces of content a week to 30, but they're editing and checking all of them before they go live, that sounds great to me. And so so a big thing for us is how do we enable people to do those sort of things? And we're building some tools right now to help people with that, because we think that's a big thing. And like, to compete in the future, you have to use AI in a deep way, but you've got to do it in a way that is good and ultimately people can trust. So
like, let's say, I would just want to throw out an example, just to see if I'm thinking about it the way you're thinking about it. Let's say I'm a recipe creator and I have a recipe for, whatever, German chocolate cake. And then I use AI to create the gluten-free version and the low-fat version and the, white chocolate version, et cetera. Is that a good use of AI? Is that kosher?
I think, again, if you are reading those and checking them and validating, I mean, in the case of food, I would prefer if you cooked it to make sure that it literally worked. But if you're a professional baker and you've got a pretty good sense of what works, like that's probably okay.
Sure.
But we want the human involvement.
Yeah, let the AI raise your children, but chocolate cake, absolutely not. We got to check it.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, I want to transition to another subject because while we have you here and you're such a deep thinker on this stuff, AdCP. AdCP, we're now like 3 or 4 weeks after they did their big demo and announcement, and one of the big use cases that some of the proponents are pushing is this idea of buying media across many small sites, automating the I/O process, and that's right up the alley of Raptive, as you represent many, many small sites. So what is your current thinking? How involved were you in AdCP or are involved? And what is your thinking about that use case?
Yeah. So, we're one of the, I don't think we're technically a founding member, but we were like in the launch and we've been kind of involved, from before it was announced. We've got some people kind of working a little bit on like the spec and trying to help figure those bits and pieces out. And we are definitely talking to companies now about like running tests to actually get dollars to transact. And we've plugged them into our GAM and all that stuff. So we're pretty involved. It's also early that like it's hard to really know how this is going to shake out. I'm not concerned about the outcome here. I think that small sites are always going to be challenged from an advertising perspective in terms of making things work and understanding the right ways to price things and the right ways to ultimately drive the most value. And so I think that for what we do, I think that AdCP, if AdCP can be a part of like removing a bunch of nonsense that's in the programmatic ecosystem and creating a cleaner, better ecosystem, like that sounds great. And I think we will still have a really, important role to play in that.
How since you're in this business pre-AI, how important is the workflow or the use case where an advertiser wants to cherry pick some of your thousands of publishers? Is that a use case that people want?
I can say from the direct side and like the PMP side, most people, a lot of people want some level of like site targeting. Most of them are pretty happy for us to do it for them. And we say like, okay, you want this contextual targeting, this, demographic targeting based on domain or whatever it is. And I'm like, people ask for that, but they're happy with us doing it. We don't see that many people saying like, we want these 13 sites and not these 24 or whatever. Like that happens, but it's a lot less common.
Right. So, yeah, but the use case of like, hey, you have 9,000 sites. I want to buy an IO against certain like data segment across those sites or performance across those sites. That's a use case that you currently entertain.
Totally. And that happens a lot for sure.
Right. So I think AdCP, one of the ideas is that you should be able to do that without an intermediary, which I'm not entirely bought into. And I assume you're not, since that would be your business.
I mean, I'm confident that if that can make things so much more efficient and so much better, that we will find a great business model that lives within that might be slightly different than what we do today. So I'm not concerned, and I want to figure out how to make it better because if it spends more money on the web, like that's ultimately going to be good for us in some way.
We're not replacing Paul Bannister with AI. All right. Okay, great. This is a good conversation. We're going to transition to the news of the week because we have a lot going on. We will be back in a minute. This podcast is brought to you by Playwire. Tired of ad monetization platforms that feel like black boxes even when they promise you complete control? Playwire is launching a truly self-service ad platform that gives you actual control. Manage the components of your ad tech stack you want, or let their AI handle the heavy lifting where you don't. Your choice. Real-time analytics, transparent reporting, and zero hidden fees. Mention Marketecture and get 50% off your first year. This offer is only available through the end of Q1 2026, so act fast. Visit playwire.com/ramp-self-service to take control of your revenue. That's playwire.com/ramp-self-service.
All right, everybody, we are back with the refresh. We have a lot to talk about this week. Maybe we'll start with earnings, the final earnings recap of the past 3 weeks. We've been doing a bunch of this stuff, so maybe we can take a step back afterwards and talk about what we've learned in the market. So I'll take through it quickly. We could talk about any specifics afterwards. So this is end of last week as well as this week. So TTD had solid earnings, revenue up 18% quarter year over year for the quarter. Viant, also solid earnings, revenue up 12%. CTV was up 46% for Viant. They said audio, similar to what we heard last week with Magnite, is growing very quickly. And they won Molson Coors, which they've been making a lot of noise about. So some great stuff out of Viant. They were also talking up their autonomous platform that, basically they're positioning as a open internet alternative to PMax and Advantage Plus. AppLovin, another monster quarter, up 68% to a $1.4 billion quarter. Teads was interesting. Teads was, unfortunately, revenue was up a bunch. Revenue was up 42%, largely due to the Teads integration from legacy Outbrain, but the company swung to a big loss, which, had a real effect on the stock. And this is where one of those stats that you pointed to in the previous segment where I came from, Teads in their call said they've seen 10 to 15% decline among what they call premium publishers. And we'll talk about that in a second. We talk about some open web stuff. Then finally, Pubmatic, solid quarter, revenue up 5%. Again, CTV up 50%.
Yeah.
Anything specific you guys want to touch on before we just kind of bring it back to what we learned this quarter?
Look, Teads, I'm worried about Teads. So they have enormous amount of debt service because they took on debt to do the acquisition. And when you have a lot of debt, you do not want a 10 to 15% decline in your top line to suddenly come from an external factor. And I talked to someone earlier this week. I was like, what could Teads do? And the first thing they said is they have to renegotiate the debt. And when that's your first priority, that's not great. That's not a great position to be in. So let's keep an eye on that space.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Paul, anything call out to you?
No, I mean, it all seems like, I don't want to say standard stuff, but like these are mostly directions we've seen from these companies. The best. The Teads thing is a little bit of a surprising point for sure, but it does jibe with everything else we're hearing from other angles. So yeah, makes sense.
Teads is very exposed to open web, right? There's Teads is video, but it's a lot of web
online
video. Yeah. The other thing I'm interested in is this more Molson Coors win for Viant. The conventional wisdom's always been that there's like 3 major DSPs, maybe 4 if you include Yahoo, and then the sort of peloton of sub $1 billion DSPs all sort of compete with each other. And the question is Viant breaking out? Is Viant going to join the top 4? They don't have the revenue. Like, they're a pretty small company compared to the other ones. But if they can win top 100 advertisers onto their platform and take it from Trade Desk or whoever, I don't know where Molson was migrating from, that's a big deal. That's good for that company and stock.
Yeah. Competition is good.
I agree. And, if we believe that AI is going to, rewrite the script, so to speak, and create an opportunity for new winners, I think you're onto something, right? Because they might not have the revenue today, but what do they have? They have a bit of a head start in AI, at least from a positioning perspective. They've got good assets in terms of both the household ID as well as the legacy Iris TV content ID. And they're really trying to champion this idea of, making the open web, the open internet, accountable, measurable, ability to, be outcomes based.
Don't forget smart, aggressive founders, not private equity.
The most aggressive founders, having competed with them for a long time. Never count out the Vanderhooks. All right, what do we learn this quarter? Almost every company was up. The demand side companies are up more than the supply side companies in general. The platforms, namely the walled gardens, they were up more than anyone. So I think it's the continuation of the trend is number one. Number two, we're seeing the impact of AI. I go back to the stat that you pointed out, Ari, when we were talking about Meta, where fully 30% of their revenue was being driven by the end-to-end AI ad products. And others have been pointing to that. And then for the open internet, CTV is driving like all of the growth. Everybody's talking about 50% quarter over quarter, 50% year over year with CTV. And, a little bit of mixed in terms of the, state of display, open web. If you're, kind of using AI, I think it gives you a good, nice lane there.
Yeah, 2026 is CTV plus a political year. Could be gangbusters for a lot of these companies.
It should be. Yeah, that's a great point. Let's go back, talk about open web. Let's talk about some of the stuff. I think that Paul, having you here is going to be a good conversation. So there was a report a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember if we talked about it when it came out. All right, but Digiday had a good write up on it. I think it was last week, where basically Forrester in their 2026 predictions. By the way, to differentiate, you need to do your 2026 predictions like 2 months
Early?
before it's one.
Yeah, it's like
2 months before the year.
pumpkin spice latte. We're gonna do them in September.
Exactly. Yeah, they had a number of predictions, but the big one that I think got everybody talking was they predict that display budgets are going to be cut 30% due to AI, and the reason why is twofold. There's a couple of quotes. Maybe we pull them out, maybe we don't. So number one, it's traffic. Right? If traffic is down 20-30%, you can imagine ipso facto spend goes down 20%. But then there's the unaddressability, unaccountability, right? Where it's like very difficult if you've got a choice of spending on a walled garden, which supposedly $1 in, $3 out, with the unclear $1 in, what do you get out of the open internet? And you need to make a choice. You wonder where that choice is gonna go in a rational buyer's mind. Paul, how do you think about this stuff? And most importantly, like, how do you counsel your clients, your publishers to position against this?
Yeah. My highest level thought is like, I'm skeptical of the number. It struck me as like somebody saying a big number to get attention, which clearly that's working.
They did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mission accomplished. And so a little bit like, I'm pretty skeptical of the number. That said, I do think that, we all know it. Like, I really, and I'm totally biased, but I think that the web has gotten a lot better over the last 5 years in terms of like removing problems, increasing addressability, increasing measurability, like making things better. But there's still a bunch of junk out there. And so for me, if 30% hit is really the number, I mostly think that's happening in places that are the places that should be cut down anyway. It's like the number of unviewable ads and ads on random sites that it shouldn't be on, and all these problems. Like if that 30% could be targeted to the right place, that can actually be great for the web, because it would mean more money is in better places, and that will lead to more growth in the future. So macro, I don't believe it, and micro, I'm like, maybe part of that's good anyway.
Paul, shouldn't prices be going up? CPM shouldn't, like, volumes down, demand's the same. Shouldn't prices be going up on open web?
I guess the question is how much of it is like, is it the open internet, and is that money flowing to other places away from the web? So yes, probably. Our data is pretty positive this year on CPMs. I wouldn't say it was like massively up, but like it's up. So what we're also, I think we're trying to do, and I've heard this from a lot of other big publishers, is we're trying to reduce supply in general. We actually lowered this year our content ad density, like average at the beginning of the year was like, I think like 25%, and now it's like 21%. So we're trying to cut ads out in places, because we're finding for the first time ever, it used to be that if you lowered ad density by 10%, you would increase advertiser outcomes, but you'd make 8% less money in the process. So like that was a loss. Now we're finding that there's actually a bunch of places where we're able to cut density or cut ad load in general and make the same or more. And so it's like finally some of the incentives from what we can see are beginning to align in a very positive way. And that's a really good outcome too. So we want less supply in general, and parts traffic driven and parts kind of ad load driven.
Yeah. So just quick follow-up question. How do you calculate ad density? How do you get to 20%?
It's similar.
Is it pixels?
It's, I don't know exactly. It's similar to like the Sincera A2CR methodology. Okay. It's a similar
exactly how you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Is there a killer app in terms of an ad format that, if you had your choice, this would be the one, or maybe one or two of them that would be widely adopted across the open web? They're performant, they're measurable, they drive, all types of outcomes for brands.
I don't know if there's a single one. That's the other thing we've done, is we're cutting more and more plain display and replacing it more with like high impact formats. And that's like a big thing. So to sum up a little bit, it's a little bit case specific in terms of like the right unit. But like, for us, like we've got a library of 10 to 15 different formats that we can sell. And, our team is picking the right unit for the right place. But it's like, they're just better units that perform better for the advertiser. And that, again, allows us to remove the plain old display, which is definitely not as good.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. All right, cool. Let's move on. Let's talk AI. It was a big week with AI again.
Of course, every week.
And everybody basically announced the same thing.
Yeah.
So Amazon had a bunch of announcements with Unbox, but they announced Ads Agent, which is an AI that sets up and optimizes campaigns. Google rolled out Ads Advisor, which is an agentic product that basically does the same thing. And Innovid launched a set of AI tools that are, agentic and, help with campaign setup, optimization, creative generation, all this stuff. So it seems like everybody's, pushing very, very hard in this agentic direction.
Pour one out for Gigi.
Gigi's just getting started.
Yeah. So my quick framework I've been telling everyone keeps asking me about AI, and so my quick framework, which I think I've talked about on this pod before, but just to be obvious about it, is step one: automate your workflow inside one tool. That's what's going on here. Everyone's using AI, so the traffickers and the ops people don't have to fill out 50 forms with naming conventions and all that nonsense. That has to happen. Step two is integration of complementary products. So your creative goes to your ad server without a human being cutting and pasting things, and without errors, and with data correction and things like that. Stage three is integration between non-affiliated companies. So this is where AdCP has a lot of investment. So it's like, how do I buy a segment from LiveRamp and put it in my DSP, and there may be pricing and there may be negotiation involved. Or the ultimate thing is, how do I buy media, buyer to seller, where we have adversarial relationship in a sense. So this is all stage one stuff. Very valuable. Glad to see it. Doesn't change the world. Every single ad tech company should be rolling out announcements like this in the next couple of months. Absolutely. Paul, what's going on at Raptive with relation to this stuff?
A lot of it, the workflow stuff, I think is the big win. We've already built a bunch of things that help our direct sales team and PMP sales teams like automate just so much of the manual labor and spreadsheets and things like that. We're working on a thing now that can take an IO and insert all the line items directly into the ad server, and just things like that just like, they're so manual, they're so painful. And the fact that it's 2025 and it's still happening is shocking, but like, okay, now's the time we got to fix all these things.
Yeah, that makes sense. So much, I think, like awesome low-hanging fruit here. All right, let's depart. Bit of a grab bag. Did you guys see this? Former CEO of a WPP agency that produces Love Island is suing the company for $100 million.
Yeah, the Business Insider, Lara O'Reilly, reporting on this. My big question is, like, WPP produced Love Island? That's the part that I was like, what is going on? This is a set of words I didn't expect to see in a row.
Yeah, it's a WPP agency, right? Remember these, there's a bit of a, kind of Frankenstein. It's called Motion Content Group. And they specialize in reality TV. So sounds like this gentleman, the former chief executive, name is Richard Foster, was allegedly ousted after he sounds like a whistleblower complaint on kickbacks and rebates.
I think the article goes into some depth about this, that, getting a media rebate is not illegal in the US. So basically you buy media, you get a couple % back. What he is alleging is that those kickbacks, for lack of a better word, were not either disclosed or shared with the customers whose media dollars it was. And then he was fired for that. Seems very possible.
I don't know. But we learned that WP has an agency that produces reality TV.
Another facet of this that I learned that's crazy is that, like, all the big agencies have these barter agencies that they don't like to talk about. And so a lot of this rebate stuff happens through the barter agencies, where they do a media buy and then they get, millions of dollars of unsold media as sort of a bonus. And then they're allowed to allocate that unsold media to either other clients or for trades. They might give it to an airline to get first class seats on the airline that are unsold, and then their executives fly around for free. It's really ridiculously weird. It's like ready for like a Thomas Pynchon novel, how weird it is. But that might be part of this.
And going on forever, by the way, the barter agencies.
Yeah, the barter. That sounds like the most fun job. Like running the barter agency, doesn't it?
Just the random stuff in your office. All right.
Yeah, exactly. You're just
I got making phone calls. Love Island DVDs over here, which
yeah, exactly. It sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're super profitable. Anyway, all right. Let's one more, kind of interesting one that I don't think anybody would have predicted was Nativo, so one of the OG native SSPs, you might have called them in a previous iteration, was acquired for over $100 million. So good job, Justin, by Life 360. Who saw that one coming?
Did not see
It was
that
not
coming.
on my bingo card for this year.
No,
It was
No.
not. You guys familiar with Life 360?
Yeah, it's family spyware. You make your whole family get spied on by this company. My son, without talking too much about my family, my son is like a hardcore like hacker, and I've never seen someone so insulted by the idea of using this app. Like he was sort of like he was going onto the dark web to complain about his family because of this app.
Anyway, so it's a company that has I guess we call it very rich location and behavioral insights, and they cannot connect it to advertising with a platform like Nativo that seems purpose built to help run an RMN. So maybe this is the beginning of the next big RMN.
Yeah, I think Live 360 is sort of positioning itself as like another like super awesome, like a way to reach young people in some sort of I hate to say a privacy protected way, but some like way, because like honestly, I mean the detail of what they track on your family is pretty extreme. So I do have questions about how safe they are. But yeah, being able to take that data and run it across many apps, many websites seems like an obvious use case here.
I also feel like I don't know a ton about the company, but like they've done quite well. Like their stock's gone really high up over time. They seem to have made a lot of good decisions. So they clearly they've got some master plan here, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, all right, want to close it out with the big Cloud X news?
Yeah, so it came out this morning that Jim Payne, who I call him friend of the pod, but he's never been on the pod. He raised $30 million for his new in-app monetization solution called CloudX. I think CloudX might be a temporary name. I think they may change their name. But 30 million is a pretty big round for a debut. It was from a bunch of folks: Edition, DST, Global, ENIAC, it's Javelin, a bunch of others. It's a little hard to get to what it is exactly. So background here: Jim Payne is the founder of MoPub, sold to Twitter, did really well on that acquisition, and then he was the founder of Max. Max got sold to AppLovin and turned into AppLovin's kind of secret sauce for understanding the web, like unified auctions. So Jim is running a third game plan on this mobile SDK thing, and this time the difference. He talks a lot about AI in the announcement, but I think the real difference is that it uses a trusted execution environment, which is a new acronym. The privacy people understand it, called TEE. And maybe Paul has more insight on how it works. But effectively what it does is it allows the auctions to be auditable because they're done in a sort of in its own container. And I think this is a play to give buyers like Meta and other ad networks more assurance that their data is not being used by the SDK owner, who in many cases is AppLovin. So that's my interpretation of the announcement. And Jim actually agreed to be on the show. So we're going to actually have Jim Payne on in 2-3 weeks. And we could ask him about the infamous helicopter to the Preakness story that we broke on this pod many years ago, and he objected to. That's a deep cut. Sorry.
We will be able to call him a friend of the pod after that, or maybe not if he gets really mad about the story. Paul, what you got?
The mobile app space to me is a kind of mysterious, and so I agree with the point that AppLovin is the 800-pound gorilla right now, but also people are like, what is going on here? So something that is more transparent and more clear, that could bring a lot of value to people. So it sounds interesting, but super early, obviously.
They also, their launch partners were included Meta, Liftoff, and Magnite. So those are demand sources they'll be bidding into this SDK. Pretty good list.
Yeah. You know what is cool about this is some of the most successful entrepreneurs, and this may be endemic to ad tech, they keep doing the same thing, right? So this is the third, kind of like mobile app startup that Jim has done after monster successes. Think about like the Moat guys. They built, the best like analytics platform ever. They're back building an analytics platform. The universal ads guys, they just keep building ads APIs, starting with Shift or brand networks. And they've done it like 2 or 3 times super successfully. There's something to this idea of people just like, bringing back the old playbooks, which makes me wonder, is there a DSP in someone's future?
There's so many people who want me to build a
Mr.
DSP.
Paparo.
Oh my God.
I know.
I could build a DSP and then exit for like $100 million, like 3 times in a row if I wanted to. Like there's so many people who want to buy a DSP, but then you have to build it and then buy it, build it, buy it. But
should we stop recording and have a different conversation?
Let's just start now. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Amazing.
As another side note, while people are looking for business ideas, I think doing something like what Jim Payne is doing in CTV would be really interesting. I think the current state of like the auction mechanics in CTV are really messy and a lot of duplication and stuff like that. And having like a neutral SDK that serves the ads would be a pretty interesting play, but worth thinking about.
Inboxes are open. That's a neat idea.
All right, this is a great conversation. I think on that we'll call it. Paul, thanks so much for being here and sharing your insights about consumers and AI. Can people get the slides, or is it
I'm
private?
happy to share the ones that I shared at the BitSwitch thing. So
Sure.
We'll figure out how to get them out there.
Okay, reach out to Paul on LinkedIn or wherever, and he can provide you the slides. It was pretty interesting stuff. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate you having me on the pod again.
See you next week, everybody. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.